Thank you and welcome to this week's version of the Bloomington Rotary Club Celebration of Service. It's April 12th, 2022. I'm your current president, Sally Gaskill. It's lovely to see everybody's faces in rectangle again. We are, of course, meeting on Zoom this week because there's no space for us for our in-person version at the IMU. And I wanted to let you know that we did try to look at other community spaces, but because of the pandemic, none of our usual venues are ready to rent to groups as of yet, which is understandable. So thank you all for being here. A quick reminder about our Zoom protocol. Please remain on mute if you're not speaking. That improves the sound quality for everyone. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Hank Heichema, who's going to give today's reflection.
Thank you, President Sally. The title of my reflection is From Pirate to Radio Ham. And in May 1938, my dad, born in 1919, appeared in court accused of conducting illegal radio broadcasts. I think Michael is going to put a picture up in a moment. He is the guy, if that picture is up, in the left of that picture with a blindfold, so he's unrecognizable. Spread out on the table in front of the judge were a homemade transmitter and associated broadcasting equipment. After the prosecutor was done explaining how dangerous radio pirates were or could be for society, the judge spoke to my dad and pointing at the equipment, he asked, "Did you put all that together yourself?" My dad confirmed it, and much to the dismay of the prosecutor, the judge handed down only a light suspended sentence while expressing admiration for the talents of this young radio enthusiast. 15 years later, my dad took his final exam to become certified as a legitimate radio amateur, or radio ham, as they are called. However, when he faced the examiner, he despaired. It was the very same person who prosecuted him 15 years earlier. After the exam was over, the examiner stood up, shook my dad's hand, and said, "Well, you passed, and let this show that the Dutch government does not bear a grudge." So he got through it. His call letters are PA0. Is there an image up at this time?
I'm just a second. I'm having some problems, Hank. It'll be up in just a second, I hope.
Okay, don't worry about it. Okay, then I will pass over explaining what's in the picture. As a Rotarian, my dad became a member of the Rotary Fellowship for Rotarians of Amateur Radio. I'll pause here for a moment and point out a picture. My dad on the left, the Zorro guy, with a friend, and the homemade equipment. And the picture below that is my dad in the shack. And the call letters for Dutch radio amateurs start with PA0. And his letters after that are NHA, which stands for Martin Heichema Averees, which is the town where he lives. So now he's doing it legitimately and no blindfold. And then the last picture shows you the emblem of the Rotary of Amateur Radio, or ROAR. Now, my dad traveled extensively in the US and visited many radio fans with whom he had a QSO from his shack in the Netherlands. A shack is the area in which you have your radio equipment. And QSO is radio ham jargon for chats on air. He also attended several Rotary International conventions and always made sure to visit the booth of ROAR to meet friends and participate in QSOs made right from that booth. So, Rotary fellowships are building international friendships all over the world, and ROAR, Rotarians of Amateur Radio, extend that to the ether. Thank you, Sally.
Oh my gosh, Hank, I love these stories about your father and his life and work in the Netherlands and his experience being a Rotarian. Who knew that there was something called ROAR, Rotarians of Amateur Radio? Now we all know. Thank you so much. I think we have several guests today, and if you happen to bring a guest or invite a guest to join you, could you please speak up? Let's see, Jim Bright, do you have any guests?
Yes, Sally, I've got at least 3, maybe, huh? Pleased to have with us today Bob Morrison, President-elect of the Columbus Rotary Club, and Bob is co-chair of the Global Scholar Program. So Bob Morrison of Columbus, great to see you, Bob, at the district conference. Also, we have with us today Susan Adams of New Albany Rotary. Susan tuned in the conference from her comfort of her home in New Albany, and of course, she was especially proud of Alan Martindale, who gave his winning 4-way test speech there at the conference. Let's see, I was expecting others, not sure they're on here with us. Anybody else who will let me claim them as my guest?
Well, how about Judy Schroeder? I think you have a guest or two today.
I do. I'm delighted to have with us Sherry Engber and Charlie Matson. Welcome.
Welcome to all of you. We're so happy to have you. And as you know, whether or not you're a guest of someone from the club or simply a visiting Rotarian, you're always welcome back. All of our meetings are now held on Zoom, and most of them are also in person. So we thank you for being here, and all of us are welcome to bring guests anytime. I want to thank today's producers on Zoom, Natalie Blaze, assisted by Michael Shermis and Joy Harder. And our roundabout reporter for this week, and in fact this month, is Aaron Brewington. We have a few birthdays in our Rotary family this week. John Armstrong, new member, whom we saw at the district conference, April the 12th. Megan Neese from the Community Foundation, April 13th. And Kay Leach, April 15th. Kay hasn't been participating in our weekly meetings for a bit, but I'm happy to say that she's a regular member of the Bloomington Rotary Book Club, and I'm looking forward to seeing her tomorrow when the book club meets. We have one anniversary this week. Marilyn Wood, congratulations. It's your 6th year as a Bloomington Rotarian. I want to thank all 26 of you who attended the district conference on Saturday, and especially those of you who attended for the first time. It was so great to hear Alan Martindale give his speech again. And I want to thank Tim Jessen again, without whom we wouldn't have had Alan to win our local club's 4-way speech contest. And by the way, the district prize for Alan's speech was $1,000. So that's really great. Also from our club, big kudos go to the conference planning team members who were Jim Bright, Alan Barker, and of course our district governor-elect, Lance Eberly. Jim Sims led 2 sessions on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And Alan Barker and Michael Shermis made up the tech team. But of course, we compiled a year's worth of period product pouches for Girls Inc. We raised money for the Rotary Foundation through the sale of gift baskets. And I want to specifically thank Art Omick for his contribution of a beautiful leather portfolio to our gift basket. In all, we learned a lot and we had a lot of fun. So looking forward to next year in Terre Haute. As I mentioned, the Rotary Book Club meets tomorrow, both on Zoom and for the first time ever in person here at my house. If you haven't been on the book club list and would like to be, please let me know. Of course, it's open to all Bloomington Rotarians. And we'll be discussing tomorrow Kurt Vonnegut's novel, Player Piano. Finally, in terms of my announcements, last week's Happy Hyper Dollars, as you probably, or is it Hyper Happy Dollars, as you probably gathered, was a big success. 37 members donated a total of $3,129. And this is more than enough to fill the gap between the funds that we have available in our Bloomington Rotary Foundation and the need. So we will in fact be able to support all $7,500 in scholarships this year. Those are scholarships that go to both graduating high school seniors from Monroe County schools, as well as 2 Ivy Tech students. The scholarship committee is hard at work, and we look forward to meeting our 4 high school scholarship recipients during our first meeting in May, always one of the highlights of the year. Thank you all for your generosity. If you need to pay your pledge, please do so either with a check made out to Bloomington Rotary Foundation, or you can simply ask Natalie to deduct the amount from your next quarterly bill. And with that, we've got time for regular happy dollars that support Teachers Warehouse. Natalie's already got the PayPal in the Zoom chat. And so I am here to ask if anyone is happy this week. And if so, would you like to share how you're happy and make a donation to Teachers Warehouse? Anybody? Sarah Laughlin?
Hi, Sally. I've been happy for a few weeks, but I haven't had a chance to say this. I got $10 for Teachers Warehouse because we have taken in the MSD Martinsville schools. The Rotary Club of Martinsville is sponsoring Martinsville schools to join Teachers Warehouse. It's our first new school corporation in the time that I've been there. So I think in at least 10 years. So we're just absolutely thrilled by that.
Congratulations, and the work of Teachers Warehouse continues to expand its impact. Any other happiness? Jim Bright.
Yeah, Sally, $20 for Teachers Warehouse in honor of my wife who loves volunteering there on Wednesdays. But I'm especially happy to have seen such an amazing turnout of young people at the district conference. We had 35 interactors from 3 different high schools across the district. We had 13 Rotaractors, including 2 who got to sit at the table with IU President Pamela Witten and 2 global scholars. For the Rotaractors, I promised them I'd get the word out. They're having a fundraiser on this Saturday. It's a 5K run and walk gathering in Dunn Meadow. I'm going to pass along the information to Aaron Brewington for mention in our roundabout. But whatever you can do to support these outstanding young people and their cause, which is a maternal mortality program in Sierra Leone, please do so. They would really appreciate it. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Jim. And let's see, Bob Morrison, what you got?
Well, I would like to give $10 to your Happy Bucks because frankly and honestly, I had a wonderful time in Bloomington over the weekend at the conference. I got to see a number of folks that I have the honor of working with each year with regards to Global Grant Scholars. I get to be with a gentleman who knows very well how much I feel a kinship to, and Mr. Jim Bright, who gave me a wonderful opportunity. I had the opportunity to introduce Aubrey Cedar, our first grant scholar, as part of the first breakout session group. And as I told everybody at that moment, that I had the absolute best job of anybody at the conference on Saturday, getting to be having the honor of introducing both Aubrey and then Kelsey Lecter later on. So I want to thank you for opening your meeting to me today. Thank you for the opportunity to be of service. And as some people may know, I manage 4 radio stations here in Columbus, Indiana. We do reach South Central Indiana. So Jim, if you will kindly forward me the information about the 5K, we will make sure that makes our community calendar. And anytime we have anything like that that's going on in your Rotary Club, please forward it to me. It's very simple. I will put my email address in the chat for everyone. And anytime you have something, you can just email it to me at the station, and I'll take care of it after that. Thank you for the time.
Bob. Thank you, Bob. We really appreciate that offer. And don't worry, we'll be sending you stuff.
Excellent.
Let's see. I've got a happy dollar if no one else does, which is, well, actually at least $10. Let's say $10 happy dollars. You know, it's been a rough 2 years for those of us who are choral singers. And I'm really excited to share that my choir, Voces Novae, will be performing for the public beginning Monday, April 18th, and then again on Monday, April 25th, and finally on May the 2nd, also a Monday, all at 7 o'clock, all at different venues in Bloomington. We're going to be singing a program exploring gender identity, and it's a classic Voces Novae program, complete with music of all sorts, choreography, a lot of information, and I hope that you'll be able to come out and join us at one or more of these programs. The first one is at the Back Door. That's ages 21 plus. That's a gay and lesbian bar in Bloomington. Second, totally different venue, Bryant Park Woodlawn Shelter outside. And third will be at Morgenstern Books. We'll be wearing masks. You are free to wear a mask or not. I'm just so happy to be singing again for the public. Raj Hadawi, have you got a happy dollar?
Yes, I do. Thank you, President Sally. The weather is beautiful where I am. The color is gorgeous, a lot of flowers, and that just makes me happy. I give $10 for the teacher warehouse. However, I would like to give $100 supplement our diversity fund. I was so touched by the elegant as well as the depth of the presentation of our Rotary Club guest last week. He said it all in a way I hope everybody being touched like I have. The educational, he is, I believe, a teacher at the university. He was able to put so many things together. And those of us who read a lot about what we did go in this country on for years, could understand it and expand on the few words he said about it. And for that reason, I like to increase our fund for our diversity. Thank you.
Raj, thank you so much for that. And you're absolutely right. Dr. Lemuel Watson was a fantastic speaker last week. And I also want to reiterate how terrific Jim Sims was at the district conference on Saturday. So we've got time for two more. First, Charlotte Zitlow, and then Hank Heichema.
First of all, I'm happy because I never got so much exercise as I did at walking
At the district conference, indeed.
Yeah.
From Alumni Hall to the Tree Suites.
And back again, back and forth. That was quite a workout. But
that was good.
It was a great conference. But I was I'm really happy to have seen Aubrey Cedar make her presentation about how she's built on her original project when she was our global scholar.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlotte.
That you can use theater as a basis of healing and bringing people together. And she's done a lot of work on that, including research. So it was very impressive. And we should be proud of that. So I'm happy about that. And I sent $10 to Happy Dollars. Okay.
Thank you so much. And especially for those words. And finally, Hank.
Glenda Murray inspired us to get solar panels on our roof. And if the sun now shines, we're selling electricity instead of buying it. And I would like to donate $1 for each of the 36 solar panels on my roof. So $36 for Teachers Warehouse. Thanks.
Fantastic. Rotary Connections, helping the world. Okay, we are now ready for Connie Shakalis to introduce today's speaker.
Thank you, President Sally. My visual aid, please. This is a photograph of my mother's portrait, which was painted in 1918. And I'm sorry, I've got my settings so that you can't really see it there. It's a photograph of the painted portrait. Meredith McGovern manages and researches arts and culture items at the Indiana State Museum, as well as at other historic sites. She's here at Bloomington Rotary today for the same reasons my husband and fellow Rotarian Gus and I are here. Let me explain. And my apologies to the people who have already heard this story. Between 1890 and 1910, artist colonies were forming all across the United States, including Indiana. In the late 1800s, artists, most from Chicago, came to Brown County to paint and sketch its hills and creeks. T.C. Steele was the first major artist to settle in Brown County in 1907. Later, founding the Brown County Art Colony, consisting of him and his artist cohort. One of these men, I know it was a man because my mother referred to him as he, painted my mother's portrait in 1918. She was 4 years old. It was my family's prized heirloom, for which I fought my sister after our mother died in 1982. It was the coolest thing I ever owned. Gus, while helping me move one day in 1999, accidentally threw the portrait away, thinking it, wrapped in lots of old papers, was trash. When I realized it was not among my moved items, I called my then boyfriend, Gus, and asked if he had seen it, or if perhaps that paper wad he had hurled into the dumpster could have been the portrait. He thought hard and called me back. No, he hadn't looked inside the papers. He had assumed they were trash. The fact that he told me the truth revealed to me his honest character. Are you kidding? I would have lied about that till I sprawled supine in my deathbed. Meredith McGovern came to my aid. I sent her pictures of the portrait, wondering who the artist was. The signature is illegible in the photograph of the painting. We're still not sure, but Meredith was generous with her time and history and art expertise. She has degrees in both. Her specialty is doing research on the T.C. Steele collection, and she has a lot to tell us today. Welcome, Meredith McGovern.
Thank you so much, Connie, and thank you to all of you for having me here today. I welcome opportunities to talk about the work my colleagues and I do at the Indiana State Museum and Historic Sites, and I hope you enjoy hearing a little bit about my responsibilities here. So as the Arts and Culture Collections Manager, I take care of the fine art and the cultural history collections. So this is anything from paintings to letters to furniture to textiles like quilts and costumes and everything in between. And so I make sure that each object has a unique accession number, that I'm tracking it in our database. Everything is photographed. Everything is stored in an environment that is best suited for that particular artifact, that I've taken careful condition notes and I secure conservation if necessary. And I'm also responsible for moving objects here and there, wherever it needs to go, installing it in our exhibits, or even couriering it to other institutions for loan. So one of my favorite parts of my job is taking care of the T.C. Steele collection. And Theodore Clement Steele was a late 19th, early 20th century American Impressionist painter who was known for capturing those Indiana landscapes and is arguably the most famous of Indiana's Hoosier Group painters. And some of you are probably, especially where you guys are located in Bloomington, I'm sure many of you are very familiar with the T.C. Steele State Historic Site there in Brown County, which is one of our historic sites that's underneath our museum umbrella system. And so the State Museum acquired that collection when the artist's widow, Selma Newbacher Steele, gifted to the state of Indiana in 1945, 330 paintings, along with the couple's Brown County home, the contents of their home, the artist's studio, and hundreds of acres of property. So this was a very generous gift and a beautiful gift, and one that endures today, and that I'm lucky enough and privileged enough to be able to help take care of. So if we can go to the next slide, I am going to take you on a little bit of a tour of our fine art storage here at the museum in Indianapolis. So you're going to see here some of our fine art walls where we store our framed paintings. and including all of these TC Steels that you see here in front of you. And so in a space like this, we are better able to control the humidity and the temperature, and thereby extending the life of the paintings. And like I said, most of our painting collection hangs on these sliding walls. And the Steele paintings are in regular rotation throughout the museum, at the TC Steele State Historic Site, at the Indiana State House, and also loaned to other institutions for exhibition. If we can go to the next slide, I'll show you where some of our TC Steeles live. So you see here some shelving that holds our unframed paintings by Steele. And these paintings are unframed for several reasons, but mostly due to the painting being in poor condition, its frame being in poor condition, or in so many cases, it never even had a frame. And as much as possible, and when funding is available, we conserve and frame these paintings so that we could work them into rotation and put them on display. And I work with our fine art curator, Mark Rushman, to prioritize which paintings should be conserved and framed based on the quality of the painting, the severity of the condition issues, and how the painting will enable us to tell that Steele narrative. And I should say that not all of the paintings that you see here meet that criteria. Steele left some of these paintings in very early stages of completeness, where maybe he just applied like a wash or got that underlayer on. So many of these you would not recognize as a Steele and would not celebrate as a Steele. So they might not make great candidates to frame and put out on display, but we are able to use them to talk about Steele's artistic process. And I will usually select one to rotate in down at the site to display on Steele's easel to show that, you know, this is one that he's actively working on. And here's a little peek at his artistic process. So at any given time, about 50 paintings are displayed at the site. And these paintings don't rotate in and out all at once. Instead, I've grouped them, I stagger the rotation schedule, and each group spends about 3 years on display. And last October, so just a few months ago, I rotated in 16 paintings, and 5 of them I was thrilled to be able to rotate in, because these 5 have not been viewed by the public in decades. So I can look at our transfer paperwork between the museum and the State Historic Site, and I can see that several of them had not been on view since the mid-1980s. And 2 of them, I suspect, had been much longer, if ever. So I was thrilled to be able to work these into rotation, but first I needed to be able to have them conserved and have them framed. So we spent several years working through that conservation treatment, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what types of condition issues that I see, reasons to have these paintings conserved. So the paintings I'm about to show you are not the 5 that I'm specifically talking about, but these are some other Steeles, and these are those similar conditions issues that I see time and again within the collection. So here on the left, I have marked with the red arrows lots of cracking. You could probably see there's raised lines throughout the sky, especially. And these don't scare me too much. It's when the cracks happen for a variety of reasons, mostly when a painting is not in an environment that it likes, when it gets too hot, when it gets too cold, and there's all these temperature and humidity fluctuations and wild swings, then that canvas is going to constrict, it's going to expand and back and forth. And so that's when you start to see those cracks. And when the cracks start to push up and to tint, I could see that these here on the left, they're starting to tint, meaning they're really raised. Or when the cracks start to split and what we call cleavage, where there's this line, a ridge between the cracks, that's when I start to get a little concerned, because I know that we are at risk of losing the paint, that original paint, and that's when I usually call in a conservator. Here on the left, you see an example where the original canvas, there in that bottom corner, where it has torn away and it's gone. And this is concerning because, you know, obviously that prohibits us from being able to stretch the canvas around the stretcher and to put those tacks in there. And so when I see issues like this means that it needs to go to a conservator to be relined. Sometimes they can get away with just putting a strip lining on where on that margin, that border that runs around the entire canvas. Sometimes they have to reline the entire canvas. And so they'll back it with new canvas and they'll kind of weld them together so that it has more structural support. If we go to the next slide, I'm going to show you a couple of other condition issues that I see a lot with the Steele collection. So here on the left, you can see where the cracks led to paint loss. I've up there at the top, circled in red, you can see where the crack is splitting. There, we're going to get some loss soon. And then below it, there is a big piece of loss there. And what appears to be a tiny little piece of paint still managing to cling to the border there. So with this particular painting, which I just delivered to a conservator on Friday, I collected all of the loose pieces. There were a lot of pieces in its box, and as much as possible, I collected them with tweezers. I put them in a plastic bag, labeled it with this is a painting it goes with, and I sent the paint chips to the conservator in hopes that he can readhere, glue them back in place and put it together like a puzzle. Because again, the goal is to keep as much of the artist's original paint as possible. And then here on the left, I circled in red. It's a little bit trickier to see. You might be able to see that the varnish is yellowed. And this can happen over time. What will happen is the conservator will remove this varnish. He'll either wax it or put a different varnish on it. Again, we'll just clean it up. A lot of the times it's not varnish. A lot of times it's just grime or dust or dirt over the years that just really worked its way in to the paint. And some of you, you may display your paintings over the fireplace. If it's an active fireplace, I would discourage that because a lot of times that smoke, cinders, ash will go up and it will stick to the painting. It will start to darken the paint over time. You'll often see at like cigar clubs, you'll see paintings that have been there for years and years. And if you're smoking around the painting, you'll start to note that yellowing of the paint as well. So these are just a few of the condition issues I see time and again. These are what those 5 paintings that I'm about to show you and share with you. They're similar to what they were experiencing. So if we can advance to the next slide, I'll show you the next step of the process. So after our paintings come back from conservation, the treatment is completed, that fine art curator, Mark, he and we work together to select a frame that complements the painting and helps us be able to display them. And with this particular painting, we went with the frame molding that's down in the lower left corner. It actually really drew out that, the beauty of the flowers and with that like elegant scroll work that you see there. So if we can advance to the next slide, I'll start to get into those 5 paintings that I really want to share with you. So first is a painting that was listed by Selma Neubacher Steele, Steele's widow, as forest interior in her 1926 inventory. So after the artist died, Selma went through and took careful note of which paintings were at the property, what their titles were, when they were painted, and then worked to divide the property, the estate amongst herself, and then the children from her husband's first marriage. So in the 1926 inventory, she called this forest interior. And we can see that this summer landscape depicts like a quiet clearing in a Brown County forest. You can see the light is just peeking through the tree, creating a sunny patch on the forest floor there. It's signed in the lower corner, but it's not dated. And I like this painting because I think that paintings like this illustrate just how frequently Steele left his studio. He preferred to paint outdoors, to paint on plein air, tramping through his acreage to find a view that captured his imagination. Sometimes it was like this, the woods from the perspective of the forest floor, and other times it was atop a slope looking down into the valleys. Sometimes he captured huge skies that covered most of the canvas, and sometimes, like in this one, we just get a glimpse of the sky. So if we can advance to the next slide. I love this painting. This second painting was completed in 1908, and it's known by two different titles. So in 1926, Selma listed it as Blue Sky in her inventory. And so you can see that the blue tone of the sky is very vivid. It is very eye-catching. But it doesn't really talk about what's happening in 75% of the rest of the canvas. In 1945, it was listed on a second inventory as a more poetic name, A Stroll Through the Woods. And I love that title because it draws your eye in, and it kind of forces you to take note of a detail that you might have otherwise overlooked. So here you can see in the center of the canvas that the artist captured a woman wearing a white hat, a yellow dress, and a white apron, and that she's holding the hand of a small child that's dressed in blue. So unlike some of Steele's earlier work, this painting does not depict his family members. By 1908, his 3 children from his first marriage were grown, married. Some of them had even moved across to the country to the West Coast. He was then known to paint his second wife, Selma, or her sister, or some of the young women that they hired as housekeepers. However, I think here is likely that the painting depicts 2 of his Brown County neighbors, probably a mother and a child, as they walk through a grove of trees. If we could advance to the next slide. Some of you may be familiar with the T.C. Steele State Historic Site and the House of the Singing Winds, which is what the couple called it. And many of his paintings capture the House of the Singing Winds or other buildings on their property. This painting is titled From the West Porch, and it offers us a view of the residence. And although the painting is undated, what's great about this is we know from context clues by the subject that it was painted sometime after 1908 because it depicts the West Wing, which the Steeles added to the original footprint of the house in 1908 after they determined the artist needed a dedicated studio. So for the previous year, the artist had been painting in his living room. Canvas is stacked around the walls, and probably Selma was like, oh, we got to get this out of here. And plus the light was not ideal there in the living room. So in 1908, they built that West Wing, and they also added the porch that you can see here. And the porch overlooks Salt Creek, which is a really nice vista. If you could advance to the next slide. Okay, we're going to take a look at Flowers, which is said to be the last painting that Steele worked on prior to his death in 1926. And it's considered unfinished, which is kind of weird because I look at it and it's one of those, to me, this looks pretty far or pretty much developed as compared to other Steele works. So it's interesting to think that this was one of the last paintings or the last painting that Steele was working on prior to his death. And you can see that here, like many of his paintings, he captured his wife's flowers from her garden. And these are peonies and irises. And you might be able to notice behind me, I'm sitting in our paper storage up here at the museum in Indianapolis. And so behind me is the T.C. Steele archival collection. So we have lots of photographs, we have letters, lots of correspondence between the Steeles and their friends, their acquaintances, their neighbors. And in the Steele archival collection, we have a photograph that Steele or someone had taken of this particular canvas. And what is great is on the back of it, Selma has written, quote, his last effort in the garden. So that's one of the clues that we've used to piece together that this was one of the last pieces that he worked on. If we could advance to the next slide. I love this piece. Not much is known about this. This is an untitled still life of sunflowers in a round white vase, and it's rendered in that really dark palette and with a sketch-like quality. And it's unsigned, undated. There's not a lot known about this. But what is great is I went looking for just other still lifes, others from, what is probably his Munich period, judging by this really dark palette that he was known to use during those early days of his training. And I went looking for other still lifes that might help me date this, might give me some more information. And you won't believe what I found. If anyone does research, you'll know, oh my gosh, that thrill when you find something good. And so I found a very similar still life that's owned by Newfields. So let's advance to the next slide and take a look. So it's the same subject matter, sunflowers in a round white vase. And in many cases here, the blossoms are in the exact same position. And so the Newfields painting on the right, you can see that it offers a few more details, including that maroon drapery, the book with the two clasps there in front of the white vase, but elements of it also appear incomplete to me. The Newfields painting is also unsigned and undated. However, they suspect it was painted between 1880, 1885. Again, it's that Munich period. We know that he's using this really dark palette, these browns, these earth tones, and only later does he start to experiment with lighter and lighter shades. So the Newfields provenance indicates that Steele gifted their painting to his friend and fellow painter, J. Otis Adams, and Adams' sons later gifted it to Newfields, or formerly known as the Indianapolis Museum of Art. So I've been working with the Newfields staff to learn more about their painting and hoping that this sheds light on ours. So if we can advance to the next slide. So as mentioned, those 5 paintings and many more are currently on view at the T.C. Steele State Historic Site there in Brown County, if you'd like to visit and enjoy them in person. And it's one of those things, no sooner do I get one rotation installed, I start working on the next rotation, looking to see which paintings need conservation, which ones need framed. So I've been working on it. I'm going to give you a sneak peek at 2 paintings that we just sent to a conservator on Friday that will hopefully be finished sometime this year, that we'll be able to frame next year and then get out on view. So I'm really excited to give you a sneak peek at these 2. So if we can advance to the next slide. So the painting on the left is titled House in the Woods and was painted in 1919. And it appears that Steele captured his neighbor's house that summer. With this one, I really appreciate the richness of the tones, as well as like those sun-dappled patches that you see throughout the canvas where the light is passing through the trees. But the portrait on the right is the one that is really getting me. This is breathtaking. And this is a study of an unknown woman that Steele painted during Steele's training period in Munich between 1880 and 1885. And you can see where he's exploring the use of light sources to backlight his subject matter, to dramatically define certain features like her nose, her forehead, her chin. And we don't have many paintings from Steele's Munich period as we do his Brown County period. And so I'm always thrilled to be able to rotate in a new painting from this period to help illustrate Steele's style at the beginning of his professional career. And also, after it's conserved and framed, I believe that this will be the first time it will be on public view since it was gifted to the state in 1945. You might be able to see small tacking holes running around the border of the canvas there. And so Steele had once stretched it, and but at some point, someone, maybe Steele himself, removed those tacks, peeled it back from the stretcher, and either stored it flat, or this is likely, he removed it from the stretcher to be able to roll it, to ship it back from Munich when he finished with his studies. So this gorgeous, gorgeous portrait will hopefully be on exhibit, will be conserved, will be stretched and framed and on display there in the large studio down at the T.C. Steele State Historic Site in the next couple of years. And thank you again for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about what I do at the State Museum and how I care for the T.C. Steele collection. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Meredith, thank you so much for that rich information. And I'm sure we'll have questions. So let's see who's got one. Hank Heichema.
Meredith, you said at the end of your presentation that he might have removed the stretcher to roll the painting. Would rolling a painting not damage it?
It was customary for them to roll it, to store it in like what we would think of as like a poster tube, you know, in a way. So the 19th century version of a poster tube, and ship it back to Indianapolis. Because when Steele was training in Munich, he was being supported by a patron here in Indianapolis. And he would write his patron every year and say, I'm not finished, I need more time here. And so the patron would send more money or would round up some more people to help support Steele in his training over in Munich. And often Steele would ship back his work so that his patron could display it and sell it for him to try to get some revenue going. Or Steele would agree, okay, well, if you're going to support me for this year in Munich, I'm going to paint you something while I'm here and I'll ship it back to you. So yes, I would never encourage rolling a painting now. It's best stored flat. As you can see, we've been storing it flat for many, many decades. If there were any creases from it probably being rolled, then those have worked their way out due to the humidity. And humidity over time can help us flatten as long as we introduce it slowly.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for the question.
Charlotte, you'll need to unmute. There.
Did you unmute me?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, do you have any period paintings from Munich, from the School of Munich, that would show us the relationship between Steele and his milieu where he was being trained?
The relationship between Steele and, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that last.
And the Munich school where he studied.
We have, what's great about this collection is we have so many sketches and sketchbooks of his from Munich. And so and then we also have some oil paintings. And so you could see where he is studying with these, famed painters in Munich, and they are bringing in models from the street. And I suspect that unknown woman was a model that they paid to come in from the street to sit and to pose for Steele and his fellow students to capture on canvas. There's times where you could see where he breaks away from the school and he's not necessarily indoors painting in his studio, and instead he's gone outside. I think this is where he started to develop that love of painting outdoors, capturing landscapes. We have so many sketches of his where he's taken charcoal to paper and captured these like pastoral landscape with sheep and meadows and canals running through and rivers and some villagers in the distance with baskets in their hands. It's you can really tell that he got out and enjoyed the countryside of Munich, as well as some of the buildings. Like we have a painting of his where he was in a monastery in painting and captured the interior of a monastery. And so when I bring students into our fine art storage and I introduce them to T.C. Steele and introduce them to his artwork, I'll pull the wall and I'll say, is this a building you would recognize? Have you ever been in something like this before? And they're like, no, it looks like an old building, something you would see, like maybe a castle in Europe. And I'm like, you're on the right track, and so I use Steele all the time to open these conversations and this dialogue with our school groups as they come in, and it's so, I love it, because it's like I can hook them with the Munich period. I then introduce them to the Indianapolis period, the Brookville period. I'll take them into Brown County. So many of them have visited Brown County. It's scenes they recognize, and after about 15 minutes, I feel like I've got them. They appreciate T.C. Steele. They appreciate his artwork.
Great, thank you.
Ruth Boschkoff, you need to unmute yourself. Does anybody else have a question while we're waiting for Ruth? Phil Eskew, do you have a question? Where are you, Phil?
Do you keep track of the various TC Steele paintings that are other places? Like we have several in the Bryan House.
Right. Right. I do and I don't. You know, I do in regards to, you know, often we'll borrow or we'll loan paintings to other institutions. We will borrow from private collectors. We'll borrow from, you know, public collections. And we have borrowed from IU. They have borrowed from us. And but I don't in regards to, it's a little trickier when it comes to those public collections. I'm aware of some. I'm not always aware. And I'm aware of those because we have borrowed from in the past for exhibitions. But I know when I know that I'm not completely aware of what's out there, because there are times that someone will step forward and will want to gift their painting to the collection. And it's a previous, we had not known of this painting prior to their stepping forward. And so because Steele was so prolific and painted hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of paintings, they are widespread. They have been passed down through families. And so it's not easy to capture all of what's out there. But for the most part, we're aware of what's in public institutions, you know, especially here in the Midwest. And every now and again, we'll get a real treat when someone steps forward and says, I'd like to donate my painting to you. And it's just like, oh my gosh, you know, oh, we didn't know about this one. And it's beautiful and it adds so much and it complements the others. And it helps fill in voids that, you know, exist in our collection. So we're always excited when we learn more about TC Steele and what is out there.
Meredith, thank you again so much for your time and efforts on behalf of the people of Indiana. We're out of time for today's meeting, but I wonder if you could stay a few minutes later on Zoom to answer a few more questions.
I think I have just a few more minutes. I'll be interviewing someone here in just a few minutes. So I'm happy to stay for probably about 5 minutes, I think I have.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to everyone.
In honor of your presentation today, we're going to be making a donation to Tandem Birth Center, which we drew out of a hat at last week's Bloomington Rotary meeting. This is a new nonprofit in Bloomington that offers classes on maternal and child health. Next week, we're back at the IMU, which is full of TC Steeles, and we'll be on Zoom. And our speaker will be our own Marilyn Wood, the outgoing director of Monroe County Public Library, who will discuss connecting to the future at your new library. So let us end our meeting with the 4-way test +1 of the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
And fourth,
Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And fifth, is it fun? Thank you, Rotarians. And those of you who can stay,